What's up, everybody? Hey, this is Watch Talking Out, back again with another video, and this time we're diving into Zaza Ali. And the thing about Zaza Ali is she does all kinds of videos pertaining to different topics, but this one in particular is very interesting. It's talking about equally yoked relationships and negativity. So my last relationship, I'll talk about that, but while we're reacting to the topic of the person, what somebody asked her and what she says, and also from my perspective, so I will be pausing it throughout, but I won't be doing it too much because I want the person, who's reading, which is Zaza, and her input, I want it to be paramount, and then I'll follow. So let's get into it.
About equally yoked relationships. And then the second conversation is going to be about responding to negativity when you have people on social media or just in general, in life in general, that are constantly kind of, energetically attacking you or directly attacking you. How to respond? Should you respond? What's the appropriate, sort of way to handle those type of things? And this person asked me this question because obviously this is something that I have experience with. So let's get started with the first question. And as I'm going to post the information, if you guys want to sign up for the private membership page, it's $22.22 per month. This is where all of my content is going to be moving forward. So if you join us, it's going to be a wonderful experience. All right, first question. Let me skip forward to the specific. Okay. She says, I've been in a relationship with this guy since February of this year, and we have dated off and on for the past 6 years. He is a great guy character-wise. However, he's not really a deep thinker, and he doesn't spark my interest intellectually. Our conversations are very surface level, and when I speak on a worldly topic, his responses are very naive, thinking like it won't happen to me type of belief. This leads me to feeling like I can't trust him to lead us and my future kids and I in the right direction. So I'm always feeling like I have to take control. I know that in the past I've dealt with feelings of not fully trusting myself. So I'm having a hard time discerning if this is a me or a him issue. I really want to be with him and grow together. However, I just have so many doubts about what the future would look like for us. Well, first of all, thank you.
First off, are you basing how you feel off of previous trauma from the other relationships that you had? The last thing you want to do is make somebody suffer behind the pain that you went through in earlier relationships, or just behind the other failures that you had. This is why sometimes women get frustrated behind somebody asking, okay, well, you're such and such age, why are you single? And then next thing you know, all that trauma from before just hits. So never ask that question, fellas. But let's see what Zaza has to say about this.
Thank you for sharing this with me. I know this is not a lightweight topic, and even, I'm going to give you my feedback, but I also know that there's a lot of other things at play in the bigger scheme of things in terms of, this race, not racial. Look at me, somebody, he's talking about energetic vampires. I wasn't even thinking about racism, right? But in terms of, potentially settling down and building a life with a person, and there's something nagging you in your spirit, right? So there's a lot of layers to this. The first thing I want to say is intuition is not a game. And I talked about this recently in my, I've been doing so much content over this past 2 weeks in my Sovereignty of Self women's course about when women don't trust their intuition. And so I was referencing, I think it was a quote from Greg Braden's Human by Design, where he talks about, in relationships, there's always this thing where people have this intuitive knowing. Within the first minute of meeting someone, there's this intuitive knowing of, yes, this person is going to be, good for my life trajectory, good as a friend, a good relationship, a good partnership, a good business, relationship, or it's not, right? And more times than not, they've done psychological studies on this in human behavior. more times than not, that original intuition, that original knowing, that original internal message was right. And because, we live in a world that's not predicated on us feeling our way through life, it's all logical, right? It's all right brain methodologies in terms of how we meet people, how we interact with one another, who we choose to do business with, etc. We're not really operating from the true sense of self or the inner being in terms of the life choices and decisions that are being made. So there's that, right? But then there's also, towards the end of the message, and this is what really stood out to me. This is what I highlighted, because I'm always about self-accountability, internal reflection. She said, I know that in the past I've dealt with feelings of not fully trusting myself, so I'm having a hard time discerning if this is a me or a him issue. That within itself is very telling, because if you don't really trust yourself, it's very hard to trust anyone else. And I've been, I have this moniker that I've been saying for 10 years now, never trust anyone that doesn't trust anyone, right? And I'm not saying you don't trust anyone, but I am saying the lack of self-trust is naturally going to permeate all of your relationships, especially your most sacred and personal relationship, which is this, a man or your partner that you're considering, marriage and building a world with, right? So that's the first thing that has to address before we even talk about the lack of intellectual stimulation, right? And when you say you have feelings of not trusting yourself, but then you've got this ongoing nagging feeling in the back of your mind, in the back of your spirit, about a relationship with this man that, you've been in a relationship with since February of this year, but you have dated on and off for the past 6 years. So it's not like, this is new and maybe I'm not giving him the benefit or the doubt per se. This is an ongoing, kind of back of your mind, back of your spirit feeling that you've been having, right? So we can't ignore that. And a lot of women make mistakes by ignoring those nagging feelings. We are mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical beings. And a very big issue in the rates of divorce, the rates of single parent households, the rates of cheating in our society, right? This whole conversation about polygamy and how men aren't supposed to be monogamous and all men are supposed to have more than one woman. Well, all of those conversations and those, realities are all happening and being permeated by a lack-based consciousness. The majority of conversation that I hear about relationships in Black culture and just in society in general are all based around lack-based consciousness. So we don't really cultivate and stimulate a reality where women are appraised or valued or appreciated based on intellectual prowess, right? We also live in a world that doesn't mentally and spiritually stimulate or invigorate men. I'm not talking about the fact that, most of the scientists and most of the doctors, that these sort of intellectual, segments of society, universities and academia and whatnot.
I mean, it's not, this type of society that we have today is not going to benefit for a reason. The less conscious people are, the more it benefits the people who rule. That is the whole point. And that's what people don't get, man. It's a devastation of stupidity that walks around. And when I have to, I'm not saying I'm a smart person, but when I have to just listen to some of these people and what they talk about and how they talk about things, it's just like, it makes me lose faith in humanity, because they lack not only social consciousness, but the spiritual consciousness. They don't have any form of concepts of anything, and all they want to talk about is just foolishness that doesn't apply to my everyday life. It does not work for me on a day-to-day basis, and it's just disturbing to me. So when she's talking about that, there's a reason for it, and that's another reason why it adds on to all these broken relationships and why people aren't able to trust each other and why people are not equally yoked. Because you have people who think like way up here conscious wise, because they are in tune with spirit, in tune with whatever you want to call it, whether it be God, universe, whatever it is, they're in tune with that. And then when they meet a person who has a carnal mind, it throws everything off. So I can understand that unequally yoked, and do I really want to be with this person who thinks on a lower level? And it's not to be mean, but some people just aren't thinking like that, and they don't carry out their life in that way. It's a day-to-day thing. They live day to day, and that's a problem. Prepare for the future. So you can't, yes, you can live day to day, but you have to prepare for the future. That's the most important thing. So let's keep going.
Men in higher ranking positions, or most of the people in higher ranking positions in the society, are men. But at the top of the pyramid is where, a lot of the aspects of society are being created. And most of these aspects of society, if that's how I want to say it, are not stimulating men spiritually and mentally in a way that they can become their highest and best self. It's stimulating men from a perspective to keep them underneath the people at the top of the pyramid, per se, right? So we have, like, for instance, with the conversation about polygamy, and this is a subset of what I want to say, but it's still relative. We have men that are mostly attracting or looking for women based on a physical nature. We could say whether she has childbearing hips, right? Whether she can produce, is her body, physically susceptible to be able to rear or raise a certain type of child. There's that aspect. And then obviously the physical attraction, right? How her body, her physical face, how she looks physically attractive. A lot of men in this culture, in this society, are marrying or choosing women based on physical attractiveness. I didn't say all, so you guys don't need to start a campaign. But many, if not most, that's the way the society is cultivated. Well, that's wonderful out the gate. That's wonderful when you guys are, going out together and, she a baddie and you look the part, so you guys look good together. But then as the relationship goes on, and as he's expanding, or he's growing in business, or he's trying to be a better person, or he's looking for a deeper sense of fulfillment and spirituality, or he wants to be vegan now, he wants to change his diet, he's looking to become a better man. If he doesn't have a woman that is spiritually and mentally and emotionally conscientious and aware, she doesn't have to have all of the information, right? But at least have the impetus to seek out certain information. You can learn how to cook vegan, or at least healthy, online with no problem now. But do you want to, right? So a lot of our men are seeking relationships that are not based on mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical attraction. So they end up in relationships that are not, fulfilling, and they think, and the argument is not, I can't find a woman who is spiritually stimulating to me. The argument is men are not supposed to be monogamous. But that's because they're seeking lower hanging fruit, so to speak, right? And I've talked about this before. The same thing goes for women. We may not only choose based on physical attraction. This world tells a woman, the man has to be able to take care of the finances, right? Make sure that he can protect and provide, have a bat waiting in the hall closet in case the door someone tries to rob our home, or set up an ADT system to make sure the property is secured, right? Making sure we have food on the table, making sure the bills are paid. That's pretty much the standard focus or conversation when it comes to the type of man that you're seeking. What's his credit score, that type of thing, right? So women are not really choosing based on a mental and a spiritual and emotional connection. There's always exceptions to every rule, right? So none of this applies to every woman or every man. But this is important because we're constantly emphasizing relationships and emphasizing hashtag Black love and emphasizing marriage and emphasizing the importance of, the type of partner that you marry and building families, right? And all of these things.
And everybody's out for instant gratification in the first place. And that's the reason why we're going through what we're going through. People are out for individual self and not for self, the person reflecting you, mirroring you in your relationship. Not doing the work.
Important. But are we emphasizing high vibrational relationships? And you, my sister, are looking for a high vibrational relationship. So the question is not, or the focus, I should say, not the question. For you as a woman, right? An emoter, a giver of life in the way that you operate mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. The physical giving of life is just one aspect of the conversation, being able to have a child. That's just one part of the conversation. So as a woman, the conversation, especially because you have so much invested in this man and you clearly want to build something with him, the conversation should shift to less about, is he intellectual enough, into how can I stimulate this man intellectually? That's a different.
You know what's crazy? Like, I'm looking at the cross on her chest, right? The original cross, which is the Ankh, represents a woman's female reproductive system. And when you look at it spiritually speaking, it represents the rebirth of a human being's spirit. It's so interesting, all the concepts of spirituality that you learn and things like that. And I used to believe in Jesus, right? And then I started reading and I started finding out just different things. So why am I bringing this up? I was in a relationship, and one of the excuses that, my significant other at that time would use was the fact that we're unequally yoked. And she didn't like the fact that I didn't believe in Jesus. It got up to a point where one night went out to eat with her sibling and her 2 children. And, we're just having a great conversation on the way back home. And, I was relating it to a certain subject to, when I read my Bible, certain things happen. I read the Bible and, blah, blah, blah. I was talking about Jesus. And then she, my significant other at the time, well, actually we weren't together at this time. This time it was just a little bit different, but we were talking about some other stuff. So she ended up saying, well, you don't even believe in Jesus. And then her sister, oh God, her sister went off on a tangent on me, man. And all I could think was, at this very moment, like, you know how a lot of women say, you weren't there to protect me, and, your family was bashing me and blah, blah, blah. All I could think was like, man, she didn't even look out for me. Like, tell her sister, hey, don't be like that. And of course we weren't together, but it was just the mere fact of her sister lashing out at me and becoming so upset and enraged because I had a different belief system. And of course I learned, as I got older, sometimes people actually need that. It's no point in trying to convert somebody and this is their real belief system. I would never, ever force my belief system on anybody, because people do need that. You know what I'm saying? And Christianity, if it was done right, it would be beautiful. But unfortunately, Christianity is being politicized, has been politicized for centuries. And we know this. So I don't believe in Jesus, but that's one thing that my ex used as a way to run away from the type of relationship that we needed to build on and grow from. Now, here's my belief system. as far as it pertains to the belief of Jesus. I believe in, I don't believe in Jesus the man actually existing, but I do believe in those concepts, those spiritual concepts, as I talked in the video earlier, of those being acted out and emanating from a person. Because it should be. People should see that coming from you. You know, you live your life the best way you can. You know, you don't have to necessarily live it the greatest, but be righteous to yourself. Be honest with yourself. Don't force anything on other people. You know, don't do anything. You know, you live your life, you do good by what you can do, especially in certain moments. And unfortunately, the mindset of today of these men and women is to get anything by any means necessary, as long as it's advantageous for the person who you're trying to get it from. And that is very unfortunate. Unequally yoked to me means a person's unable, or should I say not unable, but unwilling to grow. Because that's what relationships are, people. You have to grow together. You may not have the same belief system, but you're supposed to be one eventually. And unfortunately, some people aren't willing to do the work. And that's what we always talk about in this situation. And I told her, hey, if you want to go to church, I'll go to church with you. I may not believe, but to be that person sitting beside you in the church doing whatever it takes to build this relationship, I will do that. And that's what was very important to me. And I want a woman who spiritually seeks out what you're supposed to seek out in this universe, in the world. And that's what I choose to do daily. You know what I mean? I try to find out what goes on in this life, what my surroundings are, you know, how to think. Life is just so complicated, but it is what it is, people. Zaza was, you know, not really as long with that. She cut it short, but if you guys do want to join her her subscription to subscribe as a member for her group or whatever, I think, or community, then you can do that. I'll post the link of the video, and it should have all that information in the description bar that she put in there. So yeah, but this is Watch, Talk, and Act. I want to make this more fire. You know, I want this to be more interesting, but it opens up dialogue from a different perspective. When it comes to trying to work on your relationships and quote unquote being unequally yoked, in my opinion, to find a solution, number one, I always say this too, define what the relationship is. Define what it is, people. That's the very first thing. Okay, to make sure that you two are on the same page. That's the first thing it is when you're in a relationship. The second thing, in my opinion, is, especially if you're unequally yoked, you have to establish a system where you're able to communicate with one another. You know, it becomes more of a process of elimination thing. But however, communication is key. So when you're disagreeing about something, especially religion, you have to be able to agree to disagree sometimes, you know, because you aren't going to have the same belief systems as all the time. I mean, it just is what it is. And a lot of times I think women more than likely sacrifice when it comes to certain relationships, dealing with religion. You see it all the time, especially in Islam. But you have to be able to have some form of communication. Next thing, somebody's going to have to be the bigger person and say, look, babe, let's not argue. You know what I'm saying? Let's not go to bed angry. There has to be a bigger person in the conversation that knows when to abort mission on specific topics and specific type of heated arguments. Somebody has to be the bigger person. So that's another situation, and that's all I'm gonna say to it. But when dealing with unequally yoked relationships, you have to be able to work that stuff out, especially if you two really care about each other. It doesn't have to end necessarily. You just have to be able to willing to do the work. Relationships are work. Period. Everything in life is work. And if you aren't willing to do that work, if you aren't willing to take accountability for the things that you do in the relationship, it's bound to fail. It's bound to fail, people. Going from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, it becomes unfulfilling, and you become like a failure in life. Why put yourself through all that? For what reason? What good is it going to do you? It does no good. If you aren't learning about what these relationships are supposed to mean, then you're going to repeat the same actions over and over and over. And it just sucks, man. So watch, talk, and act, but don't just act, people. Create solutions. Peace.